Welcome, everyone. We are on, what day is it? We are on Wednesday, day 13 of Healthy for the Holidays 2022. We are going to continue our discussion about habits today. Before we do that, if you have not already seen my webinar that we're doing next Tuesday, it's for parents on how to talk to your kids about food, body image, and weight without causing harm. One of the biggest questions I get asked, because I have such an extensive background working with children and families in this space, is how to talk to our kids about food and weight and body image. And should we even be talking to our kids? And what do I say to my kids? And I'm going to be answering a ton of questions. You guys are sending questions in after your registration. And there's a lot of questions. I'm going to be answering them, giving you practical and tactical tools, how to talk to your kids, how to create a healthy body image, how to deal with a negative body image, all of those things. So if you're not already signed up, I highly suggest joining. It's going to be probably about a 2-hour training. You'll get the recording afterwards. Like I said, there is a small fee for that. It's $19 to come for a couple of hours and be involved in this really, really important conversation. So if you're not already signed up for that, the link will be here for you in all the places in order to get signed up. Okay, let's talk about habits. We're continuing our discussion on habits. As a recap, we are all a culmination of all of our habits, what we are in the habit of doing, what we're in the habit of not doing. Okay. Think through anything in your life, and that applies. You are in the habit of doing this, or you are in the habit of not doing that. Okay. And so when we go to change things, when we go to change who we are, change our behavior in some way, we really need to be looking at our habits. On Monday, I asked you to think about the habits that were getting in your way. Yesterday, I asked you about the habits that you might want to start focusing on to start to get clear about looking at achieving your goals through a different lens, through the lens of habits rather than through the lens of outcomes or prescribed goals that you gave to yourself, right? So in other words, if you want to work out 3 times a week, but you are in the habit of pressing snooze every morning and skipping your alarm, then you need to be in the habit of getting up so that you can go work out 3 times a week, if that's your time frame to work out, right? Like, let's say that you set your alarm for 5:30 in the morning and you have from 5:30 to 6:30 to work out, and you are in the habit of hitting snooze and getting up at 6:20. You no longer have space to work out. So it doesn't matter that you said, I'm going to work out 3 times this week. You hit your snooze alarm every morning and you didn't work out, right? And this is going to play into what I'm going to teach you today. You need to get in the habit of getting up at 5:30 so that you can go work out and you can hit your 3 times a week goal. Do you see how that works? Like, we set these arbitrary goals and say, well, I'm going to work out 3 times a week, right? That goal is useless if you were in the habit of sleeping through the time that you have to work out. Okay. So I want you to understand how we as humans, right? You know that I love to go in and out of the science of behavior, the science of change, the science of our brains and how we work and how we think and things, and then go into the art of how we sort of implement that information. I'm going to go to the science for a second. No behavior happens without a combination of these 3 things: motivation, ability, and prompt. Behavior, so if you want to use an equation, B equals MAP. In other words, behavior equals the combination of motivation, ability, prompt. B equals MAP. Now, to make it even more fine-tuned, there is no behavior without a prompt. No behavior without a prompt ever. Before you eat, you got some cue or signal, whether it was craving or visual cue or bodily cue of hunger. Before you go to the bathroom, you get a bodily cue that it's time to go to the bathroom, right? Before you pick up your telephone to answer it, you get the cue that the phone is ringing. You're not picking up your telephone if it doesn't ring, right? If your phone's on silent, you miss the call, right? There has to be a cue before any behavior happens. Your spouse says something that you didn't like, that's your cue. Now you feel the emotion of anger, right? There is no behavior without a cue first, okay? So The combination of motivation, ability, and prompt. Prompt is your cue. B equals MAP. B equals behavior equals motivation, ability, and prompt. Prompt is your cue. So no behavior happens without a prompt. The combination of motivation and ability is going to push you either above or below what's called the action line. Okay, now let me explain this a little bit. Let's go back to your getting up in the morning on time example. Your alarm goes off at 5 in the morning, 5:30, whatever. You have from 5:30 to 6:30 to work out. Your alarm goes off at 5:30 in the morning. That is your cue. That is your prompt. Your alarm went off, right? So now the prompt has happened. Now the combination of motivation and ability kicks in, okay? What you want to do is get up so that you can get ready to go to the gym, correct? You have motivation to get up and get ready to go to the gym. You have the ability to get up and get ready to go to the gym. So why do you hit snooze and go back to sleep? Because there is another factor that is pulling on those motivation and ability strings. Okay, you with me? Cue has happened. Alarm has gone off. The other thing that you're motivated to do is sleep. The other thing that you have the ability to do is hit snooze, right? If your motivation for sleep and ability for sleep is stronger than your motivation for gym and ability for gym, it is going to push you below the action line. Part of the variables that make your motivation for sleep and ability for sleep stronger is how easy it is. Now stay with me here. Hitting the snooze button is super easy, isn't it? All you have to do is reach over and hit it. That ability just skyrocketed to a high state, right? My ability to hit snooze, super easy, right? It's high, high, high ability. My motivation for sleep is also pretty high, but my ability to just hit snooze right there. Conversely, your motivation for the gym might actually be higher. Like you might really want to go to the gym, but your ability is harder in that moment, isn't it? Because in order to go to the gym, you've got to get up, you got to brush your teeth, you got to go to the bathroom, you got to get dressed, you got to have your coffee, you got to get in your car, maybe you got to go downstairs. There's a lot more steps in order for your ability to be high for the gym. So your motivation might be high, but your ability is harder. When your ability is so easy, we end up executing behaviors like that. When your ability is more difficult, we end up not doing behaviors. Let me give you another example of this, okay? Let's say you have a goal to cut out sugar for the week, right? And that's your goal. And your motivation for that is high. Yep, I want to cut out sugar for the week. Your ability is also decently high, right? Maybe I took all the sugar out of my house or something like that. I'm making things up. Now you're at work and you're passing by the break room and Susan has brought her famous gingerbread cookies. Don't act like this hasn't happened to all of you, right? There's always something, especially around the holidays, right? This is why we're doing this. You're at work and Susan has her gingerbread cookies. Oh man, are they good? And they might even be warm and they smell good, whatever. Let's go through this. Behavior, saying no to the cookie. That's the behavior, saying no thank you to the cookie. Do you have your prompt to eat the cookie? Yep, they're there. Okay, so we're on our way to a behavior. Do you have the motivation to say no to the cookie? Yeah, I kind of do, although my motivation went down because her cookies are real good. Okay, so my motivation to say no to the sugar went down a little bit. My ability to say no to the sugar is still there, but it also went down a little bit because I have the visual cues of the cookie right there. I have the smell of the cookie that's kind of pulling on my ability. I also have the knowledge of how much I love her cookie. So now my motivation to say no kind of went down a little bit. My ability to say no seems to be a little bit harder. But what other vector is pulling on your behavior of saying no? The saying yes vector, right? So in that moment, when Susan's cookies are in front of you, your ability to grab a cookie, super easy, reach out and grab it. Your motivation to grab that cookie, super easy, right? Or super, super high because you love her cookies. They're so delicious. You smell them, your mouth is watering, you remember how much you like them. So in that moment, I know you have a goal of saying no to the cookie, but in that moment, when there is a prompt, your ability to grab it is high, your motivation to grab it is high. Suddenly you fall below the action line and you're saying yes to that cookie. See how that works? This happens all the time with scrolling social media. This is one of the most popular motivation, ability, and prompt examples. Is you have a big work project that you want to get done, yes? And you have a goal, you have a desire to finish the work project, don't you? And your work project is right in front of you. It's all there. Your prompt to work on the project is right there. Your PowerPoint's up. Your ability to work on the project is right there, right? Your motivation to work on the project is pretty high because you have a deadline. And then somebody texts you on your phone, right? And you go and you respond to the text message. And in that moment, your ability to check your Facebook notifications or, scroll Facebook or whatever, because you got that red button, you got that red ping, right? You have some notifications. Your ability to check it is super, super easy right there. All you have to do is click it with your thumb. And your motivation to check it, because that's how these apps are designed, is really high because you see the red alert button. So even though I know you want to get your project finished, your motivation for the project goes down. Your ability for the project goes down because it's easier to scroll social media. It's right there. It's super easy. It takes no brain power, no energy, right? Your motivation is right there because you've got the red notifications. So suddenly you find yourself scrolling and 15, 20, 30 minutes go by and you're almost up to your next meeting and you're like, I didn't work on my project. Why? Because the ability to work on the project was harder, took more brain power, took more thought, took more effort, right? Your motivation went down because it's harder, right? So even though you have these big goals, folks, we're not paying enough attention to the way the brain works. The brain likes what's easy. The brain likes the path of least resistance. Yes. The brain goes back and forth through motivation. So the dopamine that's pinging you with the red notification and, just press this with your thumb, that little dopamine hit that says, check your Facebook notifications, see what's going on over here, because that's super easy. And it's going to give you a rush of dopamine when somebody liked your post or whatever, right? That dopamine hit is really powerful. And suddenly you find yourself scrolling. Same thing with the food. That dopamine rush of, oh boy, I really like Susan's cookies. That dopamine hit, super powerful. And all of a sudden you're saying yes when you intended to say no. That dopamine hit of hitting the alarm, the snooze, because you get to go back to sleep and it's really easy, path of least resistance, boom, I'm hitting the snooze button. And these are how behaviors happen. So your big lesson, your big takeaway today is no behavior happens without the combination of first a prompt, and then the changing vectors of motivation and ability. And if you find yourself not doing the things that you said you were going to do, or doing the things that you said you weren't going to do, you can use this information and examine those situations and say, hold on a second, what was pulling on my motivation and ability? Was I more motivated to eat the cookie in that moment than I was to say no to the sugar for the week? Was I more motivated to sleep in that moment than I was to get up and go to the gym for the week? Right? And when we start teasing these things apart and looking at it from a different lens, you'll find from like a mechanistic standpoint that the brain is just operating the machine in the way that it's designed. And we can start getting curious about the vectors that are pulling on our motivation and ability, rather than saying, well, I'm not someone who can stick to anything, right? I can't do this. We can start looking at it and going, hold on a second. How can I make myself more motivated to get out of bed? Or how can I make that easier to get out of bed? Perhaps it is changing the time that you work out. Perhaps it's having your workout clothes already, picked and down at the bottom of the bed. Or even it's just an awareness of the reason why I want to hit snooze here is because it's easier for me to stay asleep. But I'm going to be aware of my habit and behavior of hitting snooze, and I'm going to ramp up my motivation for the gym, whatever it is. Once you can start looking at these scenarios, and tomorrow and Friday, I'll spend time giving you guys actual tools to implement this formula. In other words, how do I make what I want to do so easy that it moves to the top of my ability list, and the thing that I wasn't doing or the thing that I didn't want to do moves down, right? So how do I make it so easy to do? For instance, let's talk about Susan's cookie at the break room. You know that Susan's cookies are in the break room. There are a couple things you can do. Don't go by the break room, right? Don't walk by the break room, not because you're not allowed to have Susan's cookie, but because you know that once you see the cookie in your visual awareness, once you smell the cookie, once you are cued to have the cookie, your motivation for it goes up and your ability goes up. So I'm going to help myself, and I'm going to take a circuitous route. I'm not going to go by the break room. That way, I'm not being cued to have the cookie. These little sort of simple tweaks, right? Rather than trying to fight with yourself in the moment, can we work with the brain and the mechanisms that's driving us to do the behavior or not do the behavior, so that we can have a more effective outcome? Okay, I hope that all made sense. Can you start looking at your behaviors from the perspective of behavior equals the combination of prompt? Remember, nothing happens without a prompt, motivation, and ability. All right. For those of you who are science geeks like me, this all comes from BJ Fogg. He's a researcher out of Stanford, and his work on tiny habits. In fact, he has a book of the same name that came out last year. If you want to take a look into that. All right, everybody. Hope that was helpful. We will see you tomorrow.